Despite some really awesome films coming to the big screen this year, 2024 has been a bit of a rough one for the industry. And now, after box office disappointments aplenty, moves to introduce AI, and a second Joker movie hitting, God help us all, it looks like it's getting worse. A new report from Variety published this week revealed that the biggest studios are now so conscious of toxic fandom-related backlashes that they are now taking steps to assemble quote-unquote superfan focus groups to avoid invoking the ire of the online mob, and that said fan groups have already led to films being adjusted mid-production, which is just about one of the most depressing things to come out about filmmaking in the last decade. So how did we get here, and where do we go now? Is this another rung in the ladder down to Funko Pop oblivion, where fans are swaddled with Easter eggs and a never-ending conveyor belt of Remember Thing movies? Or is there hope that the studios will see sense and realise that, hey, risk is part and parcel of making art? Well, whatever the case, I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and with me today to discuss this latest round of Hollywood nonsense is Gareth Morgan. How are you doing, Gareth?
The king of nonsense here to talk about nonsense. Oh yeah, it's a weird day, isn't it? Because this report has dropped, and I was just slowly starting to rediscover my faith in movies, seeing some incredible stuff that's coming out in the next couple of months. We were having a chat actually the other day, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm excited about in the next few months. And then you reeled off a few films like Nosferatu, Gladiator 2, all these films, and I was like, oh, actually no, yeah, I'm back with the movies with a capital M. Let's do it. And then this drops.
It's the curve of the we're so cooked to we're so back, right? Mm-hmm. And it keeps on fluctuating. We can't have it in one way. And I think before we go into the big discussion over, obviously the report from Variety and what it delves into, I think 2024 has been a big kind of reckoning with the mechanics of the industry kind of year in terms of where the most creative stuff is coming from. I always go back to 2007 as this amazing kind of moment in movie history where all the big studios were cranking out the most amazing kind of independent spirited films. In 2007 you get No Country for Old Men and Zodiac and Michael Clayton, and they all make, a hefty chunk of money at the box office. And in the years since then, we've kind of gone into this very IP safe, risk averse environment, kind of spearheaded by the MCU. And over the last year, we're kind of seeing the fallout from that, where we're still getting some amazing movies, and some of them are coming from the big studios, but hits are harder to come by, and the most creative, spirited stuff isn't coming from, I feel the traditional, kind of studios and how they work. But we'll get into the article anyway. This was published yesterday by Variety, and one of the big concerns that it talks about is the idea of, toxic fandom and how it's impacting the way movies are being made. So Variety in this report spoke to a couple of anonymous sources within the industry. Some sources that they reached out to declined to comment because they were that paranoid about actually invoking toxic online backlash. But here's one of the quotes that we get anyway. It comes with the territory, but it's gotten incredibly loud in the last couple years. People are just out for blood regardless. They think the purity of the first version will never be replaced, or you've done something to upset the canon of a beloved franchise, and they're going to take you down for doing so. This is obviously, Gareth, we're part of the nerd online circles. We know that this is talking about Star Wars and Marvel, and specifically, this piece here, it talks a lot of, the sources talk somewhat about the idea of faithfulness to the source, but what really is the main thrust behind these backlashes is toxic male fandom and, bigotry and racism and homophobia and sexism, which is kind of, a really big profitable industry on YouTube, online in general, on social media, especially since it got the new guy in charge. And yeah, that's one of the big concerns here. We've seen it, obviously, I think for me, it's dented my enthusiasm to partake in some of these franchises, apart from the fact that some of them, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
It's a weird one because, like you said, we are so just immersed in the likes of Star Wars and the MCU, all these things because of this job, and we do love talking about them. And there are some great nuggets to be found still in the likes of Star Wars. I loved big parts of the Acolyte. There were some things that I wasn't a massive fan of, but I didn't have this urge to go online and go, you've ruined my childhood. This is awful, and it's attacking people, attacking actual individuals who, yeah, they were involved in like playing the characters and everything else, but on the creative side of things, it wasn't like you were attacking the wrong person. Like, and there's a lot of mixed emotions when it comes to anything new that's dropping now. Like, there used to be, not that long ago, a couple of years ago, when something new from the MCU, Star Wars, or any other franchise dropped, there was this. Sometimes there was a bit of, oh, okay, right, we're not doing anything new, we're just going to stick in this franchise, great. But then you'd hear like a certain like filmmaker was involved or a certain actor was involved, and you go, okay, that could be interesting. Like you go down the anticipation route. But now something gets announced, and there's just this dread. You're like, oh, and this person's been casted. Oh, okay, I can see what's going to happen now. It's going to be another horrible like wave of racism thrown at them. Like they're going to be in the deep end. What I do. One of the few things I actually do like hearing in this article, there's not a lot, but one of the few things is this idea of like protecting the people who are like casting these roles that studios can sense might be a bit provocative or could like spark an outrage from the fans like super fans, like that, as they call them in this article. I do like the idea of protecting people because, yeah, sure, they've agreed to like appear in these massive franchises because why wouldn't you? Especially if you've been a massive. If I was offered a part in Star Wars tomorrow, I'd be like, yes, I don't care about any like attacks that come towards me. I love Star Wars. You need to protect these people because it's not their fault. Like there's these people out there who are so precious about like the original trilogy or the prequels, and they need to be safeguarded.
But overall, this is like a depressing sign of the times that, you know, people involved in these creative endeavors, they have to exit and seed that ground, seed that space. You know, the internet back in the 90s, back when we were making fun of nerds and genius at work t-shirts, talking about like, you know, Itchy and Scratchy's xylophone and being magic or whatever. Now it's very much the case that the internet is part and parcel day-to-day life for all of us. We rely on the internet to exist in a great many ways, and while we try and police and monitor, and, you know, for me especially, I've tried to spend less time online recently. I do think it's a very depressing thought that these avenues and outlets for people to interact with, you know, people who are engaging sincerely with the material, they're going to move away the more and more that this toxicity develops. And obviously, I completely agree. People need to be protected. That is, without doubt, the thing that needs to happen. It's just depressing and miserable that we're at the point now where you can't have an actor engage with people online. There's a really good quote in here from Elizabeth Olsen talking about how, you know, she's completely offline. And I feel like this is the thing now where the internet, on our own usage of it, it's coming into all this, and it is kind of upsetting that we're at the stage where, rather than being able to engage with people, it's gotten to the point where the harassment, bullying, toxicity, and bigotry is at such a stage where that is just not feasible for a lot of people who are getting involved in these franchises. And the thing that I think is most upsetting isn't the fact that, you know, we've got some good stuff in here about, I think there are some quotes about, you know, studio executives and people saying, well, we just ignore these people, which I think is the right way to go. I think you block and ignore, and you keep them in their tiny little niche space, because they mention
yes, within the article that it's a minority. Like,
yeah,
they
it's
literally
a very vocal minority.
It's a tiny minority.
But the issue is here, we also get some talk about how they're validating this minority by talking about getting, you know, super fan focus groups involved to kind of signpost those areas where backlash will develop. And I'm sorry, that's just one of the most cowardly things that I've seen come out about filmmaking, and particularly industry in the mainstream industry, and how it's, you know, dealing with these IPs. I feel like we're in a really, really awful space here, Gareth, where the only version that you can get of a DC or a Marvel or a Star Wars or whatever, or maybe even a Lord of the Rings going forward, potentially, I have no idea what the Gollum movie is going to look like, is going to be the most risk-averse, safe IP thing. And I think with Star Wars is a really good example of this in kind of like a microcosmic way, because you have what the toxic fandom would consider to be good Star Wars, you know, like the the classic movies, maybe some of the prequels as well, and maybe the early seasons of The Mandalorian or whatever. And again, like, I think that quality-wise, The Mandalorian has deteriorated, but it seems as soon as someone enters that space who is not a white man, then, or there's any kind of element that is moving into that, then that is where the toxicity develops. So I think this is really frustrating, is the idea that the studios are willing to validate and hear these people out. The quote here is basically, this is from the actual Variety article, and then there's a quote from one of the studio execs. Those who did talk with Variety all agree that the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms in the first place. In addition to standard focus group testing, studios will assemble a specialized cluster of superfans to assess possible marketing materials for a major franchise project. They're very vocal, says the studio exec. They will tell us if you do that, fans are going to retaliate. These groups have even led studios to alter the projects. If it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. This, to me, this exemplifies why The Rise of Skywalker was so terrible, Gareth. That felt like a movie that was written in response to a very online-focused backlash. I'm not saying that everyone who disliked The Last Jedi is a bigot or anything like that, because that's patently not true, but I do think it's fair to say that The Rise of Skywalker was a movie enveloped in that post-2017 zeitgeist where it was consciously replying and responding to fan discussion and the nature of that kind of really heated, toxic element, and in some ways some of the decisions in that movie ended up validating the harassment, whether that be like the minimization of Kelly Marie Tran's role as Rose Tico in that film. And then more recently, we're getting like IP stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine, which I know people really enjoyed, but it's still very much a case of, remember the safe, fun thing, we're going to put it in front of you. And I feel like all of this, it's feeding into the same issue, is that you're getting these, the babyfication of cinema, which is not good.
It's trying to stick to this safe, tried and tested formula, but the tried and tested formula is now not tried and tested in a way, because it's like, it worked originally, like at the start, like the MCU when that all started, like they were taking, for me anyway, but I kind of knew these characters obviously from me being a young kid and going through the comics and everything else, but they were going in certain directions with those characters where you're like, okay, that's a little bit different from the comics, but they pulled it off, it made it work, and then there became this MCU formula, and then in the years since then it was like, okay, every time they've gone for taking a gamble, as you've mentioned, and it's not paid off, they've gone, okay, go back to what we did before. And it's like, no, you can't just replay those hits because people have seen them before. What made the likes of the MCU, what made Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all these things so incredible in the first place is because we hadn't seen anything like it before. It was exciting. It was like, wow, I'm in love with this. This is great. For me, a good example, like over the last couple of years anyway, I know it's not completely changed the game by any means, but the Dune films, obviously we've seen like the old versions of the David Lynch ones, but the Denis Villeneuve ones, they feel like they're in their own space. It's not like Dune's trying to do Star Wars or trying to do something else like that. It's just gone, okay, this is a vision of one filmmaker, and they've thrown it out there. If you like it, great. If you don't, well, watch something else. turn the TV off. If you don't like it, that's absolutely fine. But I fully agree that we're in this space now where it's trying to please as many people as possible. Maybe pleasing more the online circle of hate more than most people, but just in general, like with Deadpool, it felt like a film that was, I enjoyed it, had a good time, but I didn't have the best time I've ever had in an MCU film, because it just felt like something where we were just trying to please everyone in attendance, but be as inoffensive as possible, which sounds weird, talking like an R-rated film with loads of swearing and blood and gore and all the rest of it, but as far as those kind of films go, it did feel incredibly safe, and it earned loads of money. So now the MCU, Marvel Studios, are going to go, that's the new formula, we'll do a bit more of that, so expect more of that similar tone.
Back Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, and yeah, no, I agree with you. It's feeding into that. And the frustrating element here is that there are, like you mentioned, there are movies that aren't beholden to this kind of focus grouped, completely overanalyzed, market researched, product heavy creations like Dune. I put, it's a superhero movie, but Matt Reeves' The Batman very clearly has its own special, unique identity. There are clearly great movies coming out here that have lots of authorial intent behind them. There are lots of spaces beyond just the main studios that are doing this, and obviously there are still movies being done at the big studios that feel, like they're driven by auteurs. Clint Eastwood's got a new movie coming out within the next couple of months. Robert Eggers has Nosferatu coming out at the end of the year as well. It's
Ridley Scott, like, Gladiator, boom.
It's not all gone, but Gladiator 2 is a sequel.
Like, I know, it is a sequel, but it's Ridley's vision. He's gone, boom. This is my movie, love it or not, it's my movie.
So it's there. The ground hasn't been lost, but certainly 2024 being a year for looking at like superheroes kind of declining beyond the Deadpool and Wolverine success, just in terms of how it's going back to stuff that worked previously. This feels kind of like I don't know, it feels like a sliding doors moment for the genre and for the actual overall wealth of the industry, factoring in stuff like AI generation, factoring in stuff like wanting to just recycle IP, reboot IP, remake IP. Give us the new stuff. We need more thrust and momentum behind the stuff that actually matters. And I feel like people in this business, it is a business, but remind yourself that art is inherently risky.
Yeah.
We put this video out, there could be loads of dislikes. People could hate me. Maybe they do. I don't know.
We love you.
But it's part and parcel of the business. And I think it just starts with don't give oxygen to the people that have disingenuous intentions, who are clearly playing to a set narrative that is very lucrative for them. It should not be guiding any of this stuff. And the longer and the further that happens, the more that we want to swaddle people and give them their action figures to play with, give them that space to play with, the more it validates it, and you'll get just a less interesting industry, which I don't think, it's not what I want, it's not what a lot of film lovers want, and it'll lead to a space where we can't get something like, like a Sam Raimi's Spider-Man or whatever. We won't be able to get like the actual creative intent behind it because everything will have to fit a certain, a facet of the source material, or it will exclude people because of like who they are. I hate it, Gareth. I saw this break last night, and it didn't ruin my evening, but I was just like, oh, good, another awful thing. Lovely.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to stress, really, is probably like the send-off message, that art and true creativity should be risky. Should be dangerous, should be something that can't be made from a formula, can't just be replicated, like you just go, okay, copy and paste, do it again. It's different, it's a spark, it's something that just comes out of nowhere. All these films that we've mentioned that have started these franchises, they've been rolls of the dice. They really have. They could have backfired massively. We've seen over the years so many of these franchises backfire. It happens. That is the movie making industry. We've now got people in this industry that think they've cracked it. They've cracked the formula. We know how to do it now. We know how to have a constant stream of money coming in. Don't work like that, and people are starting to clock it. Like the casual audience, the general audience, they can smell it. They can smell when they're just being force-fed the same thing again, and they won't come. They won't come to the cinema, and they'll put it on the streaming service, and they'll just switch off halfway through it. That's what will happen. So take risks, be bold, give auteurs, give real, like, single-minded creators the money, and the good times will come back. They will, but I'm just trying to keep that faith, honestly. Yeah. I am. Just as long as the creators keep getting the money, the real creatives out there, I have some little fragment of faith, but we'll see what happens.
Things will, to quote Bill Pullman from Independence Day, we're going to carry on, we're going to survive. Movies aren't going away, and there will still be independent spaces. There will still be aspects of movies in the studios where it is unique and, has authorial intent behind it. But as far as the big IPs are concerned, the Jurassic Worlds are there, the Star Wars is out there, the Marvel's out there. It feels like we're in a pretty depressing space at the minute. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below about this superfan focus group thing. Have things just gotten to a ridiculous state? Let us know down there. Drop the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to What Culture for more delicious content straight to your inbox every single day. Either way, I've been Ewan, this has been Gareth, and we will catch you next time.